Mike Tyson is one of the most ferocious humans to ever exist.
I was going to rip his heart out. I'm the best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been. There's no one can stop me. Lynx is a conqueror. No, I'm Alexander. He's no Alexander. I'm the best ever. There's never been anybody as ruthless. I'm Sonny Liston. I'm Jack Dempsey. There's no one like me. I'm from Nairclaw. There's no one that can match me. My style is impetuous. My defense is impregnable. And I'm just ferocious. I want your heart. I want to eat his children.
During his reign, he terrified opponents. There were many times when people would drop out of a fight once they knew they had to face him. But behind all the toughness, Mike did a lot of things to propel himself to the top, things I'd never known before. So today we're breaking down 7 lessons from Mike Tyson to become the best to ever do it. If you're new here, my name is Ben, and this is where I make the videos that I wish existed about great warriors and leaders, breaking down the non-obvious things that they did to succeed. I'm not a historian or anything like that, but I study these people all the time, and I train Muay Thai and Jiu Jitsu as well. I just finished Mike Tyson's autobiography, and I've been watching a bunch of documentaries and videos about him as well. So with that, let's jump into it. First up, Mike Tyson is never-endingly curious. I was listening to him on Joe Rogan, and well, just take a look at this.
I'm sure you are a fan of Miyamoto Musashi. I'm sure.
Tell me about the Japanese warrior.
Yeah, book of and
Tell me about
Taekwondo
that.
tournament.
So, hey, let's check it out. What is that? Can you just please tell me what that is?
There's probably a dozen points where Joe brings up something he's never heard of, and his first response is, "Tell me about that." He's always looking to learn more. The secret is that he focused his curiosity on boxing, but it's a habit in general. He's idly curious about many things and deeply curious about one. He even learned about all the greatest conquerors in history, but we'll talk about that a little bit later in point 6. Second, we can't fail to talk about Mike's obsession. Like I said, I've been reading his autobiography and I'm making a podcast about him too, but in the book, he talks about how he'd stay up late into the night just watching tape of old boxing matches. All of his free time, he'd spend talking to his trainer, Customato, talking about boxing, the mindset for boxing, the greats of boxing. He would do anything he could to get an edge on his opponent.
Why are you out running 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning and not later in the day? Or why do fighters do that?
Because I don't want to do it. I mean, if the disciplines have to do things that you don't want to do. I think I want to get up at 4 and run. No one wants to get up at 4 and run when it's pitch dark. It has to be done. And the only reason I do it so early is because I believe that the other guy isn't doing it, and that it gives me a little edge.
He said he wanted to succeed so bad he'd be willing to do anything Cuss said, even kill someone. That's how obsessed he was. Third, Mike built himself into a mythical figure. In my video on Khabib, we talk about the importance of having a few crazy stories to build lore. Well, Mike was one of the best to ever do this. Just to ring off a few, he bit Holyfield's ear in a fight.
Oh, and some nasty stuff in there that lead to be a bite almost.
He had a pet tiger. He'd get into street fights and almost kill people. Like I said earlier, he'd wake up in the middle of the night and go running just to get an edge on his opponents. And he'd say stuff like this.
Every time I hurt somebody and knock them out, my life gets better. And so I love hurting people now. Because my life is getting better and I'm getting the fucking girl, I'm getting the mansion, I'm getting the planes, I'm getting the boats, I'm getting whatever I want, so hurting is beautiful.
And if you've watched my other video, you've already seen this, but I'm going to throw out some examples of crazy stories that I love. Fourth, we can't talk about Mike without talking about his trainer, Customato.
If he weren't here, I probably wouldn't be alive today. The fact that he is here and doing what he's doing and doing as well as he's doing and improving as he has gives me the motivation and interest to stay alive. Because I believe that a person dies when they no longer wants to live. But I have a reason with Mike here.
Now, Cuss is a legend in the world of boxing, and he deserves a podcast or a video of his own.
I better not do that. Cuss doesn't like a fool.
If you do it because I said it, you're a fool. You got to do it because what I said was right. That's what you got to do it for. Not because I said, all I do is remind you.
But this guy was a master at developing someone's mindset. He knew the exact buttons to press to get Mike motivated, to build his confidence, but also to keep his ego in check so he would keep training. It reminds me of another principle I've heard recently, that someone else will always be able to push you harder than you can push yourself. That's why people will show up to their jobs when they're sick or hungover, but but can't stick to their own diet for more than a week. That's why the best athletes in the world all have coaches. So Cuss found Mike when he was in prison, and he pushed him to an unbelievable degree.
Would it be overstating the case if I said he basically saved your life?
No, not overstating at all. Not at all, Brian.
In a crazy time in his life, Cuss served as a direction and a leader for Mike. There's this crazy clip that I love that I just got to show you because it shows how much Mike looked up to Cuss.
If God came down and gave you a laptop or a computer or a phone and said, you have the chance to send an email to Cuss Casimiro, what would you write in that email?
Oh shit. How did I do?
No matter what, he always wanted to make Cuss proud. Fifth, most people know Mike as this crazy, violent partier and boxer. And he definitely did some things that aren't so great. But Mike is extremely self-reflective.
Listen, this is what I learned. Everybody that you fight is not your enemy, and everybody that helps you is not your friend. And that's what life taught me. My mind of thinking was all about gladiator and being tough, and I would never think. I look at it now, so look at that silly little kid. What does that silly kid think he's tough? I would think this guy thinks he's tough.
He's always humble enough to investigate where he might have messed up and learn from it. Sixth, we touched on this earlier, but from a very early age, he studied the greatest warriors and conquerors in history.
Listen, I'm a fucking student of war. I know all the warriors from Charlemagne, Achilles, the #1 warrior of all warriors. From there, Alexander, Napoleon, I know them all. I read them all, I studied them all. I know the art of fight, I know the art of war. That's all I ever studied. That's why I'm so feared. That's why they feared me when I was in the ring, because I was an annihilator. That's all I was born for.
That's got a special place in my heart since it's very similar to the mission of this channel. All of the most successful people spent a lot of time reading biographies of those who went before them. Warren Buffett reads about successful businessmen and inventors. Jeff Bezos reads about successful founders. Mike Tyson read about famous warriors. A quote I heard once said, "You become who you idolize." And that's exactly what happened with Mike. By understanding how these people operated, he was able to become just as successful as them.
I don't care how great the teacher, I had a masterful teacher, but if you want to be the best, you watch the best. You look at the best. You know, you watch them and you have their lifestyle. Don't be like this, have their lifestyle. And that's what it's all about. Have the lifestyle of the greatest.
The seventh is that he had a warrior's mindset from the beginning.
I was a sick perfectionist when I was a kid.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. It seemed like it, like you were obsessed.
That's my whole life. That's all I did was look at boxing, watch boxing, read about fighters. It was all about fighters. Fighters were my God. Fighter, oh, you know that guy, that's a fighter. I want to be around them, be their groupie.
In the book, he says if it wasn't for boxing, he'd be in prison because that's just how he's wired. Now, this lesson is something that's harder to teach, but the takeaway here is find what feels like play to you that feels like work to others. Other people would get bored watching tape all night long or talking about boxing for hours on end, but to Mike, that was the most exciting thing he could do. Mike was so successful in part because he found a job that matched up perfectly with his personality.
I feel I was born to fight because I have no other interest in anything else.
And for a long time, he never had an off switch, so there was nothing to come and distract him from his goal. He was all in. If you want more Mike content, I'm starting a podcast telling the full stories of these warriors' lives where we have time to really get into the details. Sometimes you can't do that in these YouTube videos. You'll get some crazy stories like how he started robbing houses in Brooklyn, how he became a king in prison, how he thinks about defeat, and his mindset going into each fight. I like it even more than these videos, and you can check it out in the description. So here's the summary of the 7 lessons. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.